You've been asking God to take the feelings away, crying out, whispering in the dark, pleading in prayer. If they're not for me, then why do I still feel this way? And maybe, just maybe, you've started to wonder if something's wrong with you. Why can't your heart catch up with your head? Why do the emotions linger when the relationship is long gone or never even began the way you hoped? But what if I told you God isn't ignoring you? He's not withholding healing. See, he's being intentional. See, we often treat feelings like enemies, things to be buried, silenced, shot off like a light switch. But God doesn't operate like that. He's not in the business of numbing you just to make you comfortable. He's after something deeper than relief. He's after revelation. Your emotions, as overwhelming as they may feel, are not random. They are signals. They are whispers of the soul that, when surrendered, become instruments of transformation. Sometimes God allows the feelings to remain because he's still speaking through them. He's using the H to draw your attention to what's still unresolved, not just in the situation, but in you, a telescope, because if he took the feelings away too soon, you'd miss the lesson, you'd skip the unveiling, you'd walk away from the story too early, never seeing what he was trying to show you. You think the problem is that you still feel something for them, but maybe the invitation is to feel it through God's lens, to ask, what is this emotion revealing in me? Where is it pointing? That longing, that grief, that stubborn hope, those aren't just leftover fragments of a broken connection. They're mirrors, reflections of something God wants to uncover, to heal, to refine. Remember Elijah in the cave, waiting for God to move in wind, earthquake, and fire. But the Lord came in a whisper, and sometimes that whisper is wrapped in an emotion you don't understand yet. The silence after the goodbye, the tension in your chest when you hear their name. That's not always your flesh acting up. Sometimes it's the spirit tapping gently saying, come closer. There's something I want you to see. You may be praying for detachment, but God is after alignment. He's not ignoring your request. He's elevating it. Because if he only removed your feelings, telescope, you might feel better, but you wouldn't be better. He wants your healing to be whole, not rushed. He wants to rebuild the foundation, not just paint over the cracks. Maybe those feelings remain because you've been defining closure by distance. But God defines closure by revelation. And sometimes the only way to get it is to walk through the valley of emotion, not around it. He leads you beside still waters, yes, but he also walks with you through the valley of shadows. And in that place, he restores your soul, not by removing the shadow, but by revealing who he is in it. You see, the persistence of your emotions isn't a sign of spiritual failure. It's an invitation to spiritual focus. Telescope. It's not that you haven't prayed enough, fasted enough, moved on enough. It's that God is using those lingering feelings to unearth something you wouldn't have discovered any other way. And here's the truth. You can't ignore every time your heart aches. He's closer than you think. Every time the memories resurface, it's not just nostalgia. It's a window. And if you lean into that moment instead of running from it, you'll find him there teaching, healing, revealing, because God wastes nothing, not even your confusion, not even your unanswered prayers, not even your feelings. And so tonight, I want to say this plainly: your emotions are not your enemy. They are messengers on a mission, and God is the one sending them, not to torment you, but to awaken you, to point you beyond what you lost and toward who you're becoming. So let the tears come. Let the memories surface. But don't stop there. Don't build your life around what you're feeling. Build it around the one who feels with you, walks with you, and speaks through it all, because God finally does lift the weight, and he will. You won't just be free of the feeling, you'll be full of wisdom, and you'll know he didn't remove it too soon, because what it revealing was far too important to miss. Some pain is the sound of purpose being born. Don't silence it. Listen, waiting is one of the hardest places to be, especially when your heart is still tangled in feelings for someone you thought you'd be free from by now. You've done the right things. You've cried. You've tried to reason your way out of it, even begged heaven for release. And yet the feelings remain still fresh, still weighty, still unrelenting. And maybe you've asked, why am I still here? Why won't this pass? Why does it still pull at me like this? But I came to tell you, it's not because God has overlooked you. Telescope, it's not because he's forgotten your prayers. It's because there's a deeper lesson in the waiting. There is something sacred in delay, something eternal in what feels like emotional limbo. And though it feels like nothing is happening, everything is beneath the surface, behind the veil. Inside of you, we live in a world addicted to instant results. We want healing now, clarity now, closure on demand, but the kingdom does not move at the pace of your emotions. It moves at the pace of your transformation. And transformation doesn't happen in the rush. It happens in the reveal. And that's what God is doing in your waiting. He's revealing layer by layer, wound by wound, motive by motive. He's not just working on your heart. He's shaping your character, forging your discernment, refining your faith. A telescope, he's not keeping you in the waiting to punish you. He's using it to prepare you. Because let's be honest, if he had removed your feelings the moment you asked, you would have left with your heart still tethered to fantasy, still idealizing something that didn't reflect his best, still vulnerable to the same trap in a different face. So he allowed the H to linger, not to torment you, but to teach you to see, to discern what's real from what's emotional residue, to distinguish between a soul tie and a divine tie, between what you wanted and what you needed. The wilderness teaches what comfort never can. It stretches your capacity to recognize truth, to stop interpreting every delay as a denial and start seeing it as divine design. I think about the Israelites wandering in the desert, not because they were lost, but because they weren't yet ready. God had already delivered them from Egypt, but Egypt was still alive in their minds, their language, their reactions. And until Egypt got out of them, they couldn't walk into what was next. And isn't that the same with us? You've been brought out of that person's life. Maybe the door has closed. Maybe the communication stopped. Maybe the chapters are finished. But if you're honest, they're still living in you, in your hopes, your thoughts, your what ifs. And God, in his mercy, won't let you walk into your promised future with residue from your past wrapped around your soul. So he waits with you, and he teaches you through the wait. He teaches you to distinguish desire from discernment. He teaches you to hear his voice in the silence. He teaches you to trust him, not just with your mind, but with your emotions. Because anyone can trust when they feel peace. But what about when they don't? What if the feelings aren't gone yet because he's training your obedience to rise above your emotions? What if this tension is developing spiritual muscle you didn't know you needed for what's coming next? You see, this season may feel like a standstill, but in the spirit, it's a furnace, a sacred fire where false expectations are burned away and purity is formed, where discernment is not learned through instruction, but through surrender. You're not just waiting for the feeling to go. You're being prepared to never fall for the counterfeit. Again, you're being trained to recognize the voice of God, even when your heart wants to listen to something else. Don't despise the delay. Don't rush to escape it, because what God is building in you now, through the ache, through the silence, through the days where the feeling won't lift, is weightier than anything you're waiting for. So if you're still feeling it, still carrying it, still walking through the emotional fog, don't lose heart. The lesson isn't done yet. And when it is, when the purpose has been carved into your spirit, you won't just be free of the feeling, you'll be formed by it. And you'll realize he didn't make you wait because you weren't ready for release. He made you wait because you were ready for revelation. You've been asking why the feelings won't go. A telescope. You've laid it all out. Told yourself you're done. Told your friends you've moved on. Even told God you're ready for release. And yet, you still feel it. That strange pull. That flicker of memory. That atch you can't quite explain. You've rebuked it, prayed over it, distracted yourself from it. And still it lingers. But couldn't it beg that what's lingering isn't just about them? Sometimes we ask to remove feelings that we've never truly surrendered. Not because we don't want to be free, but because part of us is still holding on to the idea of what could have been. We've let go of the person, but not the hope. We've released the relationship, but not the fantasy. We say we're ready, but deep down, there's still a tether. And God, in his mercy, won't sever what we're still secretly feeding, because God doesn't just respond to what we say. He responds to what we release. And some of us are asking for healing while cradling the very thing that's wounding us. You're saying, God, take this from me. But your hands are still on it. Your thoughts still wrapped around it. Your emotions still tied to a version of the story that never unfolded. And so he waits. He waits. Not because he's distant, but because he's close. Not because he's punishing you, but because he's inviting you. Inviting you to a real surrender. The kind that doesn't just happen with your lips, but with your posture. The kind that doesn't just say, I'm done, but says, I trust you more than I trust my idea of how this should have gone. Let me ask you something. Have you truly let go of what that connection represented? Not just who they were, but what they symbolized to you. Validation, identity, belonging, purpose. Sometimes we stay emotionally connected, not because we're in love with the person, but because we were in love with version of ourselves that we imagine we'd become with them. But the truth is, if your identity is attached to anyone other than the one who created you, your soul will remain divided. You will always be stuck between your head and your heart, between faith and fantasy, between surrender and control. And that's why the feelings linger, because God is too kind to let you move forward still tethered to what he's trying to replace. He's not ignoring your cry for freedom. He's revealing the part of you that doesn't really want to be free yet. Because to be free means letting go of more than just a person. It means letting go of control, of timing, of your version of how the story should end it. It means standing in the mystery and saying, even if I never get the closure I wanted, I choose peace. Even if I never understand the why, I trust your wisdom. Even if my heart still trembles, I choose to walk by faith. That's not easy. That's not soft, poetic surrender. That's deep, wrenching, soul-level obedience. But that's where the shift begins. Not when you stop feeling, but when you start releasing, really releasing, laying every last piece of that hope on the altar, saying, if this isn't from you, I don't want it. Even if my heart still misses it, I release it. Because here's the truth, and God won't compete with your idols. And sometimes a telescope, the reason you still feel tied to them is because they become a quiet idol in your life, a source of comfort, fantasy, or meaning that you haven't yet placed back in his hands. And he loves you too much to let you stay there. He loves you too much to let you move forward on unstable foundations. That's why he's asking for all of it, not just the visible parts, not just the confession, but the internal agreements you've made, the dreams you've kept in the back of your heart, just in case. The door you've left open, even slightly, hoping maybe someday it close it. Not because God is cruel, but because what's coming can't enter a divided house. A telescope, the fullness of your calling requires the fullness of your surrender. And until you give him the last remnants of that connection, the ones you haven't told anyone about, you won't feel the full release. But when you finally unclench your hands, when you fully surrender, even the hidden pieces, you'll feel it. The wind will shift. The weight will lift. The clarity will come. Because God moves instantly where there is full surrender. And you'll realize the reason the feeling stayed was because the altar wasn't full. But the moment you gave him everything, freedom rushed in like a flood. Sometimes when you think his love is really just a wound calling out for attention, we often believe the reason we can't stop thinking about them, can't stop feeling for them, can't move on from them is because they were special, meant significant, and maybe they were, or maybe they were simply the mirror that finally revealed the part of you that never healed. See, the human heart has a way of clinging not just to people, but to pain, to moments, to memories, to versions of ourselves that were shaped in broken places. And when you met them, it might not have been about who they were, but what they awakened in you, a longing, a need, an ache that had been sitting quietly beneath the surface, unnoticed until they showed up and stirred it. They didn't create the wound, but they triggered it. And now you're asking why the feelings won't go, why the attachment won't break, why your emotions are still wrapped around a moment that's already passed. But you need to hear this. You're not just grieving them, you're grieving what their presence touched in you, what they represented, what they pulled to the surface. Because sometimes God allows your heart to be stirred so that your soul can be healed. And he knows what your logic tries to forget, that there's a wound beneath the love. There's a scar beneath the smile. And if he removed the feelings too soon, you'd miss the invitation to go deeper. We are masters at managing pain on the surface. We stay busy. We stay distracted. We label things love that were really just survival. But the Spirit doesn't just want your behavior to look healed. He wants your roots to be healed. And if he has to leave your feelings exposed in order to get to the origin of the H, he will, because your heart is too valuable for surface level peace. He's after the real healing, the kind that lasts, the kind that rewrites your patterns, not just your memories. Think back, that rejection, did it really start with them? Or did it echo something from before that need to be chosen, to be seen, to be understood? Did it begin with their absence, or was it already in you long before they ever entered your life? This is why the feelings linger, not because you're weak, not because you're broken beyond repair, but because God is pulling back the layers. He's saying, let's not just patch this, let's what's underneath. Remember then the man at the pool of Bethesda, 38 years waiting to be healed. And when the healer stood before him, he didn't start with sympathy. He started with a question, oh, do you want to be made whole? Not do you want to feel better? Not do you want the pain to go? But whole, because healing is deeper than relief. Wholeness is greater than closure. That's the question echoing over you now. Do you want to be made whole? Because if you do, that means surrendering not just the memories, but the deeper wound they exposed. The fear of abandonment, the craving for affirmation, the silent belief that you're hard to love, easy to leave, destined to be second best. He's going after that. He's going to the root, not because he's cruel, but because he's kind enough to confront what you've tried to bury, a telescope. So don't be discouraged that you feel it. Don't let shame convince you that you should be further along by now. This isn't just about a breakup or a misconnection. This is about a soul wound that has finally come to the surface to be healed. This is about the divine surgeon opening what needs to be cleansed, not to harm you, but to restore you. Let him do the work. Let him reach into places you've protected for years. Let him speak into the child in you that still fears being forgotten. Let him rewrite the narrative you've carried, the one that says you're only worthy when you're wanted, because that's the lie he's tearing down through this. And one day when the work is done, when the roots are severed and the truth has been planted deep, you won't just wake up with peace. You'll wake up with power. You'll see that the person wasn't the point. The healing was a telescope, and you'll know that the feeling didn't stay to torment you. It stayed to expose what needed to be healed. So you could finally walk whole into everything that's next. You've been asking to be free. You've whispered prayers in the stillness of night, aching for the weight to lift. The thoughts, the memories, the pull that won't seem to break. You've stood in worship with your hands raised, heart torn, wondering why, after all this time, you still feel something, still sense them, still hurt. And in the silence, you may have wondering, why hasn't heaven answered this yet? But what if I told you this isn't a delay in deliverance? It's an invitation to deeper intimacy. Because sometimes God doesn't remove the feelings right away, not because he can't, but because he's using them not to punish you, not to confuse you, but to draw you closer, to bring you face to face with the place he's always wanted to meet you, in the depth of your longing, in the middle of core of your ache, your unneed. There is a holy mystery in the way God works through pain. He doesn't always deliver by erasing the storm. Sometimes he teaches you how to lean into him while the storm still rages. Sometimes he lets the ache remain just long enough for you to stop running to people for peace and start running to him, because he knows this truth. Until he becomes the one you reach for in the quiet, you'll always be vulnerable to the voices that come in the noise. You wanted him to take the feelings away, but he wanted to take you deeper. There are places in his presence that only pain will take you, places of intimacy you don't find when life is neat and emotions are tidy. There's a version of your worship that only rises when your heart is in pieces. There's a prayer that only comes when your soul is undone, and he meets you there, not to shame you for feeling, but to transform the way you feel. He's not trying to numb your heart. He's trying to rebuild it around himself. That's why you're still feeling it. Because he's teaching you that peace doesn't come from resolution, it comes from relationship. And if he took the emotions before they did their work, you'd miss the deeper knowing. You'd settle for relief, not transformation. But he's not in the business of shallow healing. He's after something eternal, something lasting, something holy. You thought you needed closure from them, but what you really need is connection with him. Let's be honest. There's a part of you that still wants them to apologize, still wants the answers, still wants a return, a rewind, a what if. But God is too jealous to let your peace hang on someone else's words. He wants to become your source, your comfort, your clarity, your certainty. And that only happens when you lean into the ache instead of trying to escape it. When you press into his presence with questions you don't have answers for, and trust that even in the tension, he's speaking. Even in the waiting, he's moving. David said, "My soul thirsts for you in a dry and weary land where there is no water." That kind of thirst, the kind that shakes your core, doesn't come from abundance. It comes from absence, from wilder loss, from longing, and maybe, just maybe, you telescope. Your lingering feelings aren't evidence of failure, but evidence of thirst. Maybe they're leading into the arms of the one you've always needed Maybe they're showing you where your soul still needs to drink, not from attention, not from fantasy, not from the past, but from living water. This is sacred ground. Don't rush past it, because if you stay here long enough, if you learn to let him meet you in the longing instead of fighting it, you'll start to notice something. The feelings begin to shift, not because the past changes, but because you do. You begin to crave him more than them. You begin to trust his voice more than your own.